Welcome to another installment of the Devos. Our question for this video is, why would Jesus never turn against you? Now, to answer this question, I want to go back and look at something we have been speaking about the last couple of weeks. I know I mentioned it, and that is the perfection of God. So why would Jesus never turn against us? Well, turning from someone, that sense of disloyalty, of failing someone, that is an imperfection. That is a flaw that we all too often have, and something that we try to kill in ourselves to be more like Him so that we don't do that, especially to those closest to us. Now, what makes Jesus perfect? You know, there are different denominations who think different things. Take a Calvinist. They see God's perfection as not being that meaningful. They don't look at God as perfect. They look at God as sovereign. They place all of their emphasis on God's sovereignty. That's why they don't believe that God came to save the entire world or that anyone can turn to God. They believe that God seals you from creation, which He does, and that through His irresistible grace, you have no choice but to turn to Him. And those who don't, God has placed a spirit of reprobation, a spirit of sinfulness in their hearts, and they have turned against God. They believe that it is only through God's sovereign will, so through His might makes right, because He is the most powerful creation, that is why He is good, because He gets to set the rules. You have on the other side what would be Arminianism, and that is where you can basically lose your salvation at any moment for any sin you do if you don't repent immediately. And that leads to God's perfection being removed, because then God is almost aloof. He is so uncaring. Not that He isn't powerful, but He's so uncaring about who comes to Him and who doesn't, that people can come and go. And that leads to chaos, and God is not chaotic. God is a God of order. So the truth lies in the middle of those. God is perfect. He is perfectly sovereign, but He's also perfectly loving. God is perfectly just. So what ends up happening in His perfection is that there are wages to our sin. Our sin leads to death. All sin leads to death, from eternal separation from Him. Now, in His love, because He wishes for none to perish, God has sent Christ to be a sacrifice, to lay His own life down and take it back up again for the remission of our sin, to pay our sin debt. That is God's perfect love. And He can do that through His perfect sovereignty. He can make that choice. Now, why does Jesus have to be sacrificed? Why can't God just forgive everyone's sin, and then none of this would happen, and no one would go to hell, and everybody could just live forever with Jesus and live with God in the new heaven and the new earth? That's because God is perfect, and in perfection you need to be perfectly just. So, with the sinfulness, it's not so much that God can't be near sin. He can't be around sin. It's that His perfect justice demands that the debt of sin be paid for. So all sinfulness, through His perfect justice, through His perfect sense of fairness, has to punish all sin, because God is perfection. In the way that sin is punished is to be separated from Him for all eternity. That's where Jesus' sacrifice comes in. It pays our sin debt. It covers us in His righteousness so we can be in His presence. Because God is perfect. Perfectly just, perfectly loving, perfectly sovereign. Now, I did mention that that being sealed at the beginning of creation is true. The reason it's true is because, as 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 2 says, God, through his foreknowledge, we are elect by God through his foreknowledge, which is God is outside of time. He sees everything, past, present, future. God is not in time next to us only and then looking ahead. God sees everything that could ever happen. So, to us, our choices matter. We can choose whether or not to turn right or turn left. But to God, he already knows which way we chose. And if we finish the good race of faith, as Paul put it, then God, seeing that at creation, because he's in the future, in eternity as well, seals those who finish the good race of faith. So in that way, Calvinists are true, or have that part right at least, that God did seal his elect from the beginning. But it's based on the decisions we all made. So why would Jesus not turn against us? Why will he never turn against us? Because he's perfect. Turning against us, being disloyal to his elect, to those who placed their faith in him, wouldn't be loving and it wouldn't be just. It'd be unfair, and unfairness is not justice. Would he ever turn against those who haven't accepted him? No. That narrow path is right there waiting for them. All they need to do is repent and turn to it. Turn from the world to him. He's not going to turn against them. He's not going to all of a sudden shut the gate to that path on them, shut the door on them. That path will remain open. Until he comes again, that path will remain open. Until the day of the Lord, until the end of days comes, that path will remain open. He will not even turn against them. They will have that opportunity to turn from the world and its wickedness to him and his righteousness. And Jesus will never turn because he is perfect. Because he is God, and God is the only being capable of ever being perfect. Thank you for joining me for another installment of the Devos, and I shall see you again next time.